So here we are in After Effects in my project file. For those of you who don't remember or didn't see this video, I'm just going to do a quick scrub here. Unfortunately, I can't really play at the same time as screen recording because my computer will just keel over and die. Hey, what's going on everyone? This is Ben here from Instillment, and today I'm going to be doing a highly requested breakdown of the HUD elements video. Now, before we get into this, if you could please like and subscribe if you're viewing on YouTube, I would greatly appreciate it, as it's going to help our content going forward and help us produce more free assets for you guys to use. I'd also like to preface this video by saying that I am not going to rebuild the entirety of this video. I'm just going to go through my project file and just kind of explain my thought process as I was going through and making this cool little video. For those of you who are genuinely interested in trying to recreate this yourself, there will be tutorials on the way, so keep a lookout to the Instillment Instagram, Facebook, and our website for more details on that to come soon. So here we are in After Effects in my project file. For those of you who don't remember or didn't see this video, I'm just going to do a quick scrub here. Unfortunately, I can't really play at the same time as screen recording because my computer will just keel over and die. So here we go. I flick the back switch there. HUD elements come up. Whoop. Super futuristic. Kind of cool. Flick it again. Flick it again. Turns blue and disappears. So if we look on my timeline here, basically it looks pretty simple. The bottom two videos are one, the plate shot. So what this is the shot before I color graded it. As you can see, it looked kind of dull, flat. I did film this on an iPhone, so not the prettiest thing to look at in the world, but does the job. So I'm just going to go ahead and deselect that. Going in here, I made a vignette with basically just a black solid and a mask. Scaled it up and feathered it. If I hit M there, and F for feather, you can see it's at 195 feather. That just basically gives it a nice kind of darkened corner look. Coming up here, we have two comp ones. Now, I'll explain what this is deeper in, but essentially comp one, if we double click here, is the composition for the heads-up display itself. Now, the ammo EMP select, the ammo EMP, ammo regular, the diagnostic select, and the gun effects are all pre-composed effects that I have made previously in After Effects with a little help from Envato Elements. Now, the creation of those elements will be covered in an Instillment Academy video. So again, if you're genuinely interested in creating something like this, stay tuned. But essentially, all you need to know is that the diagnostic select is that box there. So we have the wrench, the screwdriver, everything in there I pre-composed. The ammo, same thing. Going up here, ammo EMP is the asset that one switches to. For those of you who don't know what pre-composing is, it essentially means that you are taking one set of graphics, you are making them into its own composition, and then you either render it out from there, or you bring that composition into the composition you're working on, so it appears as one layer, as opposed to a slew of other layers like you see here. So essentially the asset that I used here allowed you to come in and customize the graphic and the text that you see appear in this box. Now, it's actually pretty simple and straightforward to create one of these boxes on your own, but for the sake of simplicity and Instillment having an Envato Elements membership, I opted to just use a quick template. Essentially, it is an object that expounds outwards via all four corners with a simple little icon that pops up and a text box. So I went in, I pre-composed, I said, hey, what would be cool for this video? What if this gun had its own onboard diagnostics and an AI system? Sure, why not? Went ahead, did a diagnostic box. I came over here, ammo type. I figured that was cool. I took inspiration from the Deus Ex video game, which also has a similar gun heads-up display feature. But I said, you know what? I want to show interactivity throughout this video, so I'm actually going to make the ammo type switch, which it does so here. During the selection as well, I then duplicated the pre-composition, which is the ammo EMP select layer, and I just adjusted its tint. So it turns blue. It is quite literally the exact same as the previous ammo EMP composition here, except the key difference is it is blue. I wanted to signify a selection has been made, and I didn't just want to kind of make it look like it was being pressed inwards. I wanted to give it some pop. I wanted to give it some flair. Now, in my attempt to kind of give myself a shortcut, the one thing I really didn't consider is the fact that I wanted some big bold text up here to signify what each little box here actually meant. So this is where some simple creativity comes in. I created two black solids. Black solid number 1 is this slightly darker gray box you see up here, and black solid number 2, which is also black solid number 1, confusing, right? Is this second ammo type box surrounding the text. Now, essentially all this is I lowered the opacity on both to 20%. So that gives you the illusion that these are actually dark gray, when in reality, boom, it is just a lower opacity layer. Put that back down to 20%. Now, lowering the opacity gives these boxes transparency. So if we go back into our main Gun FX2 raw composition here, you can see that you can still see my coffee cup and the gun underneath. Now, to animate, as you see here with the boxes essentially rising upwards and fading in, accompanied by the text fading in as well. Very, very simple stuff here. We're going to do Shift P for position. And so now you can see my keyframes down here. Keyframes essentially allow you to animate objects. So under both black solids, we have our position little stopwatch here selected, which means keyframes have now been activated. So the start of each layer is right here where my mouse is. The stopwatch has been selected. It created these diamonds here, which are the keyframes themselves. And I also went ahead and selected the opacity for both solids and hit the stopwatch as well, which created keyframes for the opacity also. So since I mentioned that keyframes are animation, I wanted these boxes to not be present at first. So the opacity is at 0% for both. Now we're going to move ahead 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 frames. 6 frames later, I cranked the opacity up to 20% on both, and I also moved the position upwards. So the starting position of the black boxes are right here. In 6 frames, I moved the boxes, which I would literally do physically, click and drag up. So let's say hypothetically I wanted them to be up here instead. Now that I've made that adjustment, you can see that if I go 6 frames back, the box will follow. It starts at the same point, but it is now higher. But I didn't want it to go that high, obviously. I wanted them both to be directly beside our pre-composed assets that we have over here. And that's it. It's a super simple effect. They fade in, they rise up, and they stop. Here's where things get interesting. When I move my thumb up for the first time, I make a different selection. So system check by default was a little bigger in my composition 1. And when I flick my thumb down, the ammo type becomes bigger as if I was selecting it. All I did, very, very simple. We're gonna go Shift S for size. The scale of the system check shrinks, goes down, and I keyframed that to do so. And my second solid actually increases in size. These are very, very, very easy animation fundamentals within After Effects that can make even something as simple as a gray or black box look like something out of this world. And to not bore you with repetition, I keyframed or animated the text to match the exact movements of my gray surrounding boxes. And of course, these choices are all subjective. You could come in and you could have made your opacity 80%, so you can still see through this text a little bit to make it even more realistic. But there is a reason why I didn't do that, which I will explain shortly. So now that we've matched our black box with our animation of our text, I went ahead and I did a little bit more animation here. Again, all straightforward. It's all positional based. So as you can see, once you're done doing all of your keyframe animations and you have all your pre-composed assets in this composition, you can now bring composition 1 into your main timeline composition. So as you can see here, composition 1 is this layer and also this layer, which I'll explain in a second. We'll go ahead and put our quality to full here just so we can see. Now here we go. I got to a point where I thought this was looking pretty good. Now, I did have one issue. Let me turn off this duplicated composition. Now, do you notice how much lighter everything just became? So the reason is, in composition 1, I went a little too lenient in the opacity of the black solids. So essentially, they are too see-through. So to combat that, instead of going back into my composition and spending a lot more time tweaking it frame by frame and seeing what opacity worked best, I actually went in here. I duplicated the composition with Command D, Command Duplicate, and voila, duplicating the layer simply just made everything darker, and I lined them up exactly, so there was no issue there, and I was happy with it. Now, one crucial detail you might be asking yourself, how do I make, I'm just going to put this back down to third quality because my computer will catch fire. How did I make the heads-up display stick to my gun? Well, as Reese explained in his Star Wars style hologram video, you have to track the camera's movement of your shot. Now, everything still holds true because composition 1 is self-contained. However, it's not sticking to anything now, it's just kind of chilling there. So in order to make that heads-up display stick to this weapon, to match my hand's movements, and to make it look like it's actually there and in the scene, you have to track your camera's movement. I tracked the original plate that I showed you before that is actually off because it's not the color graded one. I'm going to fire that back up, turn it on. As you can see here in the effects control panel, I have Mocha AE. If you're on Mac, you can just hit the help at the top bar. You search for Mocha and it will say Track and Boris FX Mocha. You click that with one of your layers selected and it will bring this window up for you. For those of you on PC, go to Animation, Track and Boris FX Mocha. Once you have Mocha open, you will not see any of this tracking data appear. It will just appear like this. You click on the big Mocha sign. The host is not set to full resolution. Tracking at reduced resolution can be faster, but is less accurate. So Reese already went over this as well in his previous video, but essentially this just means that your preview quality of your compositions is downscaled for the sake of your computer not blowing up if you're like me. If you put this back to full quality, it goes back to its full HD glory. So for the sake of showing you what the track looked like, I'm going to click Mocha. Once you're in Mocha, you can see the tracking data that I have. So I actually went ahead and tracked the bolt on this M1911's grip here. And I actually didn't start the track until right about here. So I start the track on this frame. I actually had a bit of an issue because of motion blur. I was using an iPhone and its autofocus kind of tends to ruin some tracking data from time to time. So I actually had to manually keyframe about 4 frames in Mocha, but that's for another video. But essentially after that, the track worked seamlessly. So we'll scrub ahead here. We'll see that that red circle is matching the movement of my hand and the gun perfectly as it kind of goes throughout until about here when it gets janky. So the track technically ends right here, which is where I keyframe the opacity of my assets out, and that's it. So you would hit File, Save Project. It would save all that tracking data that you traced in this scene to match your camera's movement. Once you're back in After Effects, you would go to Layer, New, Null Object. The null object appears here. The null object is basically just an empty layer that allows you to paste tracking data to so that your assets that you're adding, so composition 1 in this case, can have something to latch onto and to read. After you've created your null object, as you see down here, you're going to make sure your original composition that you tracked is selected. And if you go to its effects controls up here, you will see that the tracking data menu has actually opened by itself. Now, before you click on Create Tracking Data, you're going to go down to Layer Export To. You're going to make sure your null object that you've just created is the one selected. And don't touch this. This is the source. It's going to pull from the source what you've tracked for. Then you're going to hit Create Tracking Data. Once you click that, you'll see a bunch of fancy numbers. These will all be at 0 before. All these will change. They'll go all wacky, like you see here. And then you simply hit Apply Export. What that's going to do is give you tons of keyframes. You can't even tell these are diamonds, but let me zoom in here. Wow, look at that. Those are all keyframes, frame by frame, specific movements that Mocha has done for us, essentially. So remember previously how I said I actually started the track at a specific point in time? This is the specific point in time in which I actually started my track. So I've positioned both my compositions at the start of my track, which is right here. There is zero movement in all of this red tracking data down here. I'm going to proceed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. As soon as I hit this frame, you can see a little bit of movement in the track, and that's how I knew where to place my composition. So once that's placed, you're going to go to the parent and link section. You're going to hit this drop down and you're going to make sure the null object is selected. And that is going to tell your composition that it must follow the tracking data from the null. And that's it. It is truly as easy as that. So once you have linked to your null object, you can go ahead and specifically place, don't mind the jankiness of this rendering here on my computer, but you can specifically place your heads-up display anywhere you want it to stick on your object or your gun or your person, whatever you're using. And that will essentially mean that it will stick to that specific spot. And there you have it. That's my process of how I went ahead and made this HUD video. Again, I know I've repeated this many times, but if you would like to see specific steps on how I created these bullet assets, the diagnostic assets, or specific tutorials relating to tracking in Mocha, or just very, very basic, hey, I want to start out in After Effects tutorials, please stay tuned to all the Instillment social media and make sure you check out instillment.ca and click on Academy. There you will be finding a ton of free resources and a lot more in-depth tutorials to come. I hope you enjoyed briefly diving into my head and my process of making this video, and we want to thank you for all the support so far on our videos like this. It really means a lot. This is Ben from Instillment, and I'll see you in the next video.